Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. So I hope everyone's doing good. It is Friday at about 10:30. Another nice day today here in vacation land. It's pretty consistent now with spring-like weather. So yeah, I hope everyone's doing good. I've been lately. I've been on this kick of reviewing some of my favorite Marvel movies after being super fatigued and burnt out, especially the last couple of years. I haven't really been happy with any of the Marvel movies in a while, but there are a whole bunch of them that I really love, and lately I've been revisiting the Captain America movies, and I think those movies are just amazing. So I've been doing little reviews, and I've been setting them as premieres. I had talked about them before, but and I thought I did videos on them, but I couldn't find them, and I guess I didn't actually do videos or reviews of them. So I've been doing the last few days. I've been watching those movies again, and then also doing reviews. So stay tuned. They'll be popping up if you're following this wacky channel. They'll be popping up pretty soon. They're set as premieres. So last night, last night was actually very very cool. I had a buddy of mine, my friend Andre, invited me to go see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It was playing at the Strand in Rockland, Maine, and it was the 40th anniversary, which is wild. And I've gone to the Strand, well, a bunch of times. I mean, it's an amazing theater. They have an amazing sound system. I don't think the chairs, the seating is all that comfortable. After a while, my ass was getting a little bit sore and numb, but it's a really beautiful venue. Great state of the art sound system. The screen is great. My friend Andre, who invited me, he was telling me about how he saw this movie, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. He saw it when it came out as a little kid at the Strand, and I thought that was wild. It came out in 1984, 40 years ago, which is crazy. Um, I was about, I think I was about 8 or 9 years old when it came out. I remember seeing it in the theater when it had come out, and I was like all kids back then, and there's still a huge fan base for these beloved films. I think the Indiana Jones films, especially the first three, I think they are, part of the American cinematic fabric. It's like, you know, it's just part. I think those movies were so kind of integral into, helping me develop as a kid. Like they were just, my introduction to just really well done, epic, storytelling and action films, and they were just really great, larger than life. I was a huge Indiana Jones fan when all those films came out. Not a fan of the newer ones. I think the newer ones are an atrocity. They should have stopped. But I think the first three, obviously, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom, the second one, which we saw last night, and then the Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, which was the third one. They're all amazing movies. Like they really, really are great. The thing it was an interesting experience last night, and this is probably going to lead me into doing a different video or a separate video, which it's a subject that I've talked a lot about before, but I kind of feel like it keeps coming up all the time, and it's an interesting thing to talk about, to debate to a degree, because we're in a very different place in a lot of ways, as a society than we were, say, 40 years ago when this movie came out. And even, more than 40 years ago. Obviously, we have changed as a society, and, in so many ways, for good or bad. And that's subjective. But So it's an issue that keeps coming up. So it was interesting because of, well, first off, the movie was hosted by the Strand, and there was a woman who talked about, who is the a representative of the Strand, who talked about the film first, and she talked for maybe about 5 or 10 minutes before, and talked about this movie being an iconic movie, but and it was its 40 years ago this week, I believe it came out. And it was kind of an iconic movie. All of those movies are, that entire trilogy is just they're iconic movies that generations of kids grew up on, and even newer generations of kids that are still they are still gravitating towards these films. Kind of like a cultural phenomenon similar to like Star Wars or Star Trek. So, but the woman was talking about this, the spokesperson for the Strand. She was talking about how this movie, in a lot of ways, does a has all of these really horrible stereotypes as far as dealing with races and sexism, basically, and that there are so many obviously terrible things about it, as far as how women are portrayed, especially the lead female character in this movie, Temple of Doom, racial stereotypes that are continually used in the movie. And she basically, like, before the movie started, she was almost warning the audience that this movie is filled with all kinds of horrendous and terrible stereotypes, so be forewarned. So it was interesting. It was an interesting way to start the movie. And she also said, well, that being said, this movie, she felt, is still a classic. It's still, it's still a worthwhile investment of time. It's still, it's still, an iconic American action movie. So it was an interesting way to start the whole thing. And so I want to, talk about those things, but that leads me into like wanting to make a separate video, which I think I'm going to do. And, but before I get into some of those things, I have to say that the transfer that they used for this film, I went up and talked to the same lady after we got done watching it, and it's a newer technology. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a new digital technology that it's not actual film, but it's as close as it can be. And the transfer of this film on the big screen was, I was blown away by how incredible everything looked and the sound of the picture. There was nothing there was nothing dated about this film, and I remember turning to my friend Andre a couple times, and this movie is a total spectacle, obviously, but I was just blown away by how this movie came out 40 years ago, and there is nothing dated about it. Nothing dated in the wrong way. I love a lot of films that have a dated quality because I think it works. But this film, it just looked spectacular. It looked timeless. It looked like this film came out today or yesterday. And I remember turning to my friend Andre and saying, not not a trace of CGI in this entire film, and it just looks absolutely stunning. Just amazing and timeless. And it harkens back to the classic kind of serial movies. Obviously, all the swashbuckling movies, the pirate movies that came out in the 20s and 30s, a lot of the silent films, similar to Star Wars. And George Lucas actually wrote this film, creator of Star Wars. It was directed by Steven Spielberg. It's a spectacular movie. I think it's one of the darker. It might be the darkest movie in the trilogy. Although there are dark aspects in this movie, in the franchise, especially the first one that deals with the whole like Nazi thing, and it's a little bit more darker and violent. So I don't know. It's close. It's a close call. But this movie is just so damn entertaining. I had not seen Temple of Doom in years and years. I it was probably about 5 7 years ago. I watched they about 10 or 12 years ago they put out a new like box set of all of these movies on DVD, and so I remember watching it. I remember renting the movies probably about 5 or 7 years ago, and watching them again. That was probably the last time I saw all of them. I do own Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS, and I've watched that quite a few times in the last few years. But I I had totally forgotten how spectacular Temple of Doom is. I was kind of blown away, and I was especially just blown away by the transfer of the film, and it was amazing. So all of that stuff being said, it was great, and there was a lot of people there. There was a lot of young people there. But that being said, all of the kind of the criticisms of the movie, like the way it was started, as far as like racial stereotypes, religious stereotypes, particularly around, there's the famous dinner scene in the movie where you have the royal, the more or less the royal family of India, where they invite Indiana Jones to the dinner table, and the famous scene with the monkey brains and all of these grotesque foods that they eat. You kind of can't help but think like, wow, I wonder if that was something that because I my favorite cuisine is Indian food. So I didn't try it until I was like in college, maybe after, and I wonder if seeing this movie subconsciously made me scared of ever trying Indian food, because you could say that movie has this stereotype that it portrays the cuisine of the Indians as being well, it kind of portrays them as being savages and that they're animals and that they eat this like horrible and horrendous food because they're essentially like these like monstrous brown people. So you could say that about this, like you could see that, and it's like, huh? Because I love Indian food, and Indian chilled monkey brains is not really a part of the meal. So it's interesting. It was weird. And then the lead, I think her name is Kate Capshaw, the lead actress. She plays this totally, stereotypical dumb blonde, if you will, where in every other scene she's like, and she's basically Indiana Jones's like partner. And every other scene she's like complaining about her hair or how she's like broken a nail, and she gets scared. She's like very weak in the film throughout. She gets scared all the time, and Indiana Jones is always trying to like save her, and there's all these sequences where she is kind of freaking out and getting scared or complaining about breaking her nail, and and there's like 3 or 4 times, maybe more, where Indiana Jones just like slaps her across the face, and I was just like, holy shit, like, fuck, I forgot that. So there's that, which is pretty bad, but it's pretty funny, and I forgot watching this movie so much later. Now 40 years later, you're like, there's a different kind of awareness around that. So that was pretty rough, pretty bad, and kind of funny, and surprising. And then there's also the religious aspect of how they portray the worshippers of Kali, of where they basically believe in human sacrifice, and that's not really a part of the worship of that deity, if you will, at all. So there's that, and it's interesting watching this movie on how you could say it does have those overtones of being incredibly sexist and kind of racist and things of that nature. But when I saw the movie, I never thought of those things. When it was just part of, it was pure entertainment when I remember seeing it as a kid. And that, and I can, and I felt like I can still experience the movie as it is. And it was still, a thrilling ride to go on. And the separate video that I'm thinking about doing is talking about those very things of where, we live in a very different climate where there is an area or a climate of political correctness and movies that are looked at very differently. Pieces of art are looked at very differently. There are pieces of art in literature, music, and film of things that are pushed to where pushed to the point of where they are more or less banned. And I think it has, because of the political correctness environment, and there are instances of where it's affected. I think work that's come out. There is a sense and air of where people who are creators in this art realm, whether they are writing comedies or directing films or writing films or creating music, there is this air of a worry, a worried nature of offending people, and I think it has affected those creators in a way of giving them the feeling of walking on eggshells, and that people need to be appeased and not offended in any way. So it's a very interesting time that way. So that's why I'm thinking of doing a separate video, even though it is a subject I've talked a lot about. I'm going to probably do it. But anyway, aside from that, this movie was great. I was just blown away by the transfer again. I mean, it looked like this film. It felt like it had just come out. There was nothing dated about it in the wrong way. In the wrong way. I mean, the score, the soundtrack, of course, the soundtrack, the score of the film was by John Williams, of course. Iconic, one of the greatest composers in film history. Star Wars, of course. So many other movies that I feel like he doesn't get the credit for. And Steven Spielberg directed this too. And I think Steven Spielberg, this is an example of him kind of at the height of his power. Just it's such a well directed movie. It's such a it's kind of a perfect American action movie. And I forgot that George Lucas wrote it, so it was fabulous. It was amazing. I've never seen any of these movies on Blu-ray. I don't own. The only one I own Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS, but that's about it. But still, that these movies are definitely worth buying on Blu-ray at some point. I'm sure it would be simply spectacular. But again, I was blown away by how amazing this film looked on the big screen. It was incredible. So that is the place to go to go see a movie, especially when they want to show a lot of these great American classic films. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.